Today, I'm going to talk to you about understanding what it takes to prevent and survive today's threats. So, start with a little bit about myself. My name is Terry Choate. I was in law enforcement for about 15 years. And prior to that, I spent 20 years in the corporate world. And I got really sick of the corporate red tape, mostly traveling all the time. Had always wanted to be in law enforcement, so I made a career change and found that because of the success of my company after starting it, I ended up traveling way more than I had ever traveled before in the past, but for a whole different purpose, much more meaningful to me now. It's what I've been really building up to my entire life is coming up with ways to teach people how to prevent and survive incidents of violence and stuff that really works. And I'll get into this in more detail in just a little bit. But I have all the training and experience that you think I should have to be able to teach you the things that we're going to talk about today, the things that we teach our clients. Law enforcement for 15 years. I was a team commander of a SWAT team. So not only do I have all this great training, tactics training, but the experiences that actually go along with that. And while everybody thinks that these are the things that are necessary to be able to teach you the things that we're going to teach you today and the things that we teach our clients, in reality, it really has nothing to do with it at all. But everybody thinks that if you're in law enforcement, the military, again, that the profession alone makes an expert. And first of all, let me say this: there are no experts when it comes to teaching people how to prevent and survive incidents of violence. There just aren't. We can teach you to teach you absolutes, things that you should do or shouldn't do if something were to happen. But the bottom line is that every incident of violence is like a snowflake. It's like a fingerprints. There are no two alike. So even if I've experienced 10 active shooter incidents, the likelihood of the 11th being like any of the other 10 is just not likely to happen at all. In fact, it's almost impossible. So experiences are great, but it doesn't necessarily make one an expert. So again, there are no experts. So just because I was in law enforcement, SWAT team commander, again, has nothing to do with my ability and to be able to teach you how to survive an incident of violence. But what it did do is it gave me some experiences that I can actually draw from to use examples and things like that. For me, this is something that actually and to go the ability to be able to teach somebody based on profession alone is actually creating more danger than if we do nothing at all, because just trusting in somebody because their education, experience, background, career is something that we expect to be an expert when they're not, and we listen to what they say, it doesn't necessarily create situations that are any better than if we did nothing at all. And sometimes it makes it even worse. So for me, this started when I was 13 years old. I read a book by an FBI profiler. My mother actually had it, and it really intrigued me. I became really, really interested in criminals, how they become criminals, why they become criminals. And one of the most important aspects of it was how they choose victims, because I figured if we can determine how bad guys or potential threats choose victims, we can do a much better job not becoming a victim. But then what really became of interest to me was solutions. The solutions that were given every day all across the country, from even the most respected of agencies. Here in the United States, it would be the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, local law enforcement. But even the things that come from the most respected of agencies, I really wanted to determine, do they really work, or are they little more than they look good, they sound good on paper, but they'll never work when reality strikes? And what I found is that the majority of the stuff that we're given every day, all across this country and the world, really, um, is a little more than that. It looks good, it sounds good on paper, but when reality strikes, it's really never going to work. And we see proof of this over and over and over again, pretty much on a daily basis these days, regardless of where you are. So, and I'll get more into the details of these things as we go along. But so for me, this has really been my life since I was 13 years old, well before I even had my first job, all through my corporate career and all through my law enforcement career. This has really been my focus, and my life's work. And you're going to get a small part of my life's work in this today. The one thing that law enforcement really did do for me is it solidified the need for something more in personal and organizational security. And how and it happened in responding to victims of all types, from simple theft to loss of life, and people who were actually severely assaulted and even murdered in some cases. It allowed me to see the real bottom line of what security is all about. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but the culmination of all these things really created a big part of what you're going to see, not only today, the very, 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 very basics of this, but what we do in more detail in all of the other training and services that we offer to our clients, which incidentally, we are a company that works nationwide throughout the United States with some of the biggest companies in the world, down to some of the smallest, in every type of profession you can possibly imagine, from manufacturing to schools to medical and healthcare to professional attorneys, veterinarians, banking and financial, insurance companies. It runs the gamut. Here's the bottom line of true security. None of that stuff matters. It doesn't matter what type of company, organization, individual, no matter how big, small, old, young, strong, or weak you might be. The foundation of true security is the same, no matter what. And again, I'm going to give you a feel for what that is this morning or this afternoon or wherever you happen to be. So today's threats are unique, they're dangerous, and they're everywhere. There's no one or place that's immune from this stuff, no matter where you happen to be in the world. And we see things that change regularly. New types of threats pop up, new places where we are a little bit more in danger than we may have been before. Threats to our personal safety and security, and even our organizational and family security, are very dynamic. They change. From tracking devices, which is the newest threat, at least here in the United States, and I believe even across the world, where people are placing tracking devices on people, and the people that they place them on are not aware of it, and it allows these threats to see where they live, what their routine is, and all the other things that they look for in a victim. It includes reputational harm. Today, it's not just about physical harm. Say or do the wrong thing, and your reputation can be harmed significantly as a result. It's about financial liability, cyber and social media, outlaw criminal organizations that strong arm people. This is much bigger in other parts of the world than it is in the United States, but we have a gang problem here in the United States, and they strong arm people into doing things and creating victims that way. And then all the way to assault and murder. Again, no one or place is immune. These things happen all over the place, all day, every day. So, and then I spent a lot of time inside of the school system, and it made me see the real problems with our inability to keep kids secure while they're in school. So if you think about how we strive to achieve school security, there's a big problem with it. Number one, we accept generally accepted industry standards, which again is all stuff that looks good and sounds good on paper. But at the same time, we are also looking for answers that we've been looking for the past 23 years, since Columbine High School, which is one of the worst school shooting incidents that we've had in this country in history. It kind of triggered this national effort that brought together a lot of agencies and people to try to resolve how are we going to keep teachers and kids safe in school. And almost 23 years later, not to the day, but pretty close, we had an incident that was actually worse than Columbine in Uvalde, Texas, at the Robb Elementary School, where more people were killed and or hurt than the triggering incident of Columbine. And the problem is that we are looking for solutions, but where are we looking for solutions? the same places and the same agencies and the same people that we've looked to for the past 23 years that have actually failed. And again, how do I know that the effort has failed? Because Uvalde, Texas, and several since Columbine have been actually worse than the triggering incident of Columbine. So how we look for solutions to these problems also became a really, really big interest of mine, and the creating the need to actually create real solutions to these problems rather than, again, things that look good and sound good on paper. So all this education, training, and now the experiences made me realize that we're failing when it comes to the development of life skills and the life skills necessary to ensure our security. I realized that most of what were provided as solutions to preventing and surviving incidents of violence, again, look good and sound good on paper, they'll never work when reality strikes. And it made me realizing that training is delivered by those who have a mind, who have had a mind altering career. It's the other problem with keeping people truly secure. I can come and train you as a former SWAT team commander and SWAT team operator, special forces in the military can train you, but I've had a career that altered my mind, and I can't expect that from the people that I'm training and teaching. So the other thing that I realized is the training that we bring to people, the solutions that we bring to people have to be at their level. I can't expect you to want to go learn martial arts, which you don't have to learn anyway to defend yourself, but I can't expect you to spend the majority of your life getting really, really good at this stuff because you have a lot of other things you're doing. So I realized that we have to make sure that we do things at the level of the people that we're teaching, and that we do this through outside the box thinking, changing the way that we're thinking about these things and coming up with solutions that actually work rather than things that look good on paper and sound good on paper, but will never work when reality strikes. So that's a little bit about me. That's how I got to where we are here. That's a little bit about the basis of my organization and what we do. Now I want to talk a little bit about what true security is really all about. True security is really, really, really simple. It takes very little time and or effort, but it does require a mindset change in most cases. It takes a little bit of a change in the way we think about things so that we will do the things necessary to achieve this true security. But again, the solution is really, really, really simple. And I can teach you in a very short period of time. 20 minutes or less. And I'm going to kind of give you a big part of this today as we go through this. And again, keep in mind, this is no matter where you live, this is no matter what part of the world you're in. If you are subject to threats to your personal well-being or your family well-being, what family's well-being or your business's well-being, this applies to you. And it applies no matter what the situation is. So first, we have to establish a foundation for what we call true security. I could come to you and tell you, okay, if something were to happen, you're going to do this, 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 and this, A, B, C, D, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. But if you don't understand why these things are important, the actual steps that I teach you will become meaningless. They'll fall on deaf ears. So you have to understand there's a foundation that is required for me to build for you before anything else is going to matter or do anything to help you. Okay. So first, I want to establish this. How seriously you take your own safety and security will have a direct and immediate impact on how seriously you take the security of people like your kids, your family, your employees, if you have employees, or anybody that you might be responsible for. If you don't take security seriously for yourself, you certainly will not take it seriously for those that you're responsible for keeping secure. So that is point number one. You have to take it seriously for yourself before you can have any chance of doing it for other people. Next, we need to stop trying to keep people secure and start teaching them how to be secure. We have been conditioned, and I can say this pretty much unequivocally across the board, regardless of where you are in the world, that we've been conditioned to rely on other people and other things to keep us secure. Things like alarms, security systems, cameras, um, access control, perimeter fencing, and all kinds of other things just like that. And then people. We can rely on law enforcement, the military, security guards. What that does is that basically tells us all these things collectively tell us, well, we don't have to worry about this. This is not our issue. Somebody else has our back. And that's a problem. The bottom line is that for you to be successful at keeping yourself and people secure, it is a personal responsibility. And nobody can keep you secure except for you. Think about this. If something were to happen at any point, wherever you happen to be right now, as this happens, is there anybody there that you can rely on to keep you secure other than yourself? And I know this without any doubts whatsoever. The answer is no. Even if there was a law enforcement officer in the room next to you, by the time they figure out what is the problem, where is the problem, who is the problem, find the problem, and then resolve it, there is a time frame called that we call the life or death gap. That is the time that starts the second you know and understand there's danger to you or someone you love and care for, and it expands until the time you know 100% for certain that that danger no longer exists. It's gone. It can be seconds, several seconds, minutes, many minutes, and in some cases, hours. But here's the bottom line. If you're in it, even if it's a matter of seconds, it is a lifetime. Why? Because a lot of damage can occur in just a matter of seconds. So the bottom line is the responsibility for your security is yours and yours alone. That's it. Now, in order for you to be successful with this, there are three things that you have to understand. They are the foundational elements of true security. And if you don't have any one of the three, you likely will not achieve what we call true security or get as close to that as possible. The first one is the foundation of the foundation. If you don't have this first one, the other two won't matter. And that is you have to believe that it can happen. If you don't believe that it can happen, there's little and maybe nothing that you're going to do to make sure that you are prepared if and when something ever does happen. Okay. So it starts with believing that it can happen. Think about this. If you truly believe something would or could happen, you are going to take steps to resolve it or do everything that you can to prevent it in the first place. Okay. So that's number one. You have to believe that can happen. Number two, you have to know and understand that you can win. I don't care how big, small, old, young, strong, weak, what age or gender you are, you have what it takes to win and go home right now. And this is stuff I explain in our other training courses. But again, I can say that with complete confidence or almost complete confidence. I know that there are some exceptions, but the people who are listening to me right now, you're likely not one of those exceptions. The one thing that you might be missing, and I would say that you likely are missing, at least to the extent that you will need it if and when you ever do, and that is will. Your will to win and go home has to be way up here. If the first time you're looking for it is the first time you need it, you're likely not going to find it to the level that you will need it. So you have to develop that will and make sure that you are willing, able, and capable of doing whatever it takes to win and go home. Okay, does that make you a bad person if you're able to do whatever it takes to win and go home? No, it means that you care about your family, you care about yourself, and you want to go home to them, and you deserve to go home to them, and you will not be victimized. That's all that says. Um, I want to talk about the things that we all teach our kids and how likely they are to happen, because it's critical to understand this stuff. Um, we all teach our kids about the dangers of fire and kidnapping, even at the very youngest of ages, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Well, the chances of those things actually happening to them, in the case of fire, 1 in 8 million, in the case of kidnapping, 1 in 300,000. Okay, but in spite of the fact that these are not likely to happen to them, we all teach our kids those things, even at the very youngest of ages. Two other things, though, are far more likely to happen. And these are going to be United States statistics. They may be higher, they may be lower, depending on where you are in the world. But in the United States, we have a 1 in 18,000 chance of being murdered and a 1 in 272 chance of falling victim to an assault, somebody purposely trying to hurt us and or take our lives. Now, when I asked the question of our live training, how many people have taught their kids about the dangers of murder and violent crime, even at the same youngest of ages, as they do fire and kidnapping, very rarely do any hands go up. And the question becomes, why? Um, well, the reason we don't teach our kids about the dangers of murder and violent crime and violent things and things like that is because we don't want to scare our kids, and we don't want them to know that there are bad people and bad things, people and things in the world that may want to and will hurt them. So we hide them from it. And then somebody tries to hurt them or tries to victimize them one day, and what happens? They become victims. Okay. So we have to think about the things that are realistic. You know, we have to question things like, are we creating victims? And a lot of times this is very, very difficult to take, but hear me out on this. If you have a child in school and somebody walks up to your child and punches them in the face, grabs them by the hair, throws them on the ground, assaults them, what does the school in general, and maybe even you as parents or society in general, expect your child's response to that to be? Well, it's to walk away, do nothing. Okay, let someone else resolve that problem. But the question becomes, is there anybody that does resolve that problem? Not only overall, but what about in the moment when you are being assaulted? The answer is no, there's no one there to resolve that problem. So we're teaching our kids that not only should they not defend themselves, that it's not okay to defend themselves, but it's actually wrong to defend themselves. And why do I say that? Because in most cases, if a child defends himself and against an attacker at school, who gets in trouble? They both do. So we're teaching kids that not only should you not defend yourself if you get attacked, but then it's wrong to defend yourself if you do. And then when they become victimized, they don't know how to respond. And we wonder why. Well, we have to think about this. We are actually unknowingly, not purposefully in any way, we all care about kids. We all want our kids to be secure. But these are the things that we don't necessarily think about the way that we should. Um, Now, here's the bottom line. Again, it takes very, very little effort to go from being a potential victim of a criminal to having almost no chance of becoming a victim of a criminal. Almost nothing. And that is just pay attention to what's going on around you. Now, why do I say that? Because in a poll of criminals, the number one criterion for them choosing a victim was someone who was not paying attention. So if that's the number one criterion for a bad guy choosing a victim, just paying attention will take your chances of being a potential victim of a bad guy from possible to almost no chance. Why? Because if you're paying attention, the chances of them finding one of the hundreds of other people who are likely around you not paying attention is very, very great. So just pay attention to what's going around you. We call it situational awareness. But again, situational awareness to me is an overused term. People aren't hearing it anymore. What it means basically is when you're walking down the street, pay attention to what's going on around you. Don't be on your cell phone. Don't have headphones in. Truly pay attention to what's going on around you. Just looking around and being aware of what's going on around you. If there's somebody looking for a victim, and it even looks like you're just paying attention, again, the chances of them choosing you go from possible to almost nothing at all. That's how critical it is to be aware. And that's the one thing I would tell you, outside of believing that it can happen, pay attention to what's going on around you. And that starts with believing that it can happen. And then see something, say something. If I were to ask everybody that's watching this right now, if you agree with this, I can almost guarantee you every single person would raise your hand and say, I absolutely agree with this. But I want you to think about this, and I want you to really dig deep. Do you really, truly do that? Now, if I'm in my live training, I will see people shaking their head, no, almost in shame in a way, right? Do you really do that? Or because so many people understand the importance of this, but when they see something, that's great. Number one, they don't know it's a problem because they don't know what's normal, because they typically don't pay attention. But number two, even if it is a problem, these are the reasons that we get. Well, that's so obvious. Somebody has to already know about it and have called the police. Or, I'm not getting involved in that. That's not my business. Or even worse, I don't have time to deal with this. I got to get home to my kids. I got to get somewhere for an appointment. The bottom line is, even though everybody agrees with see something, say something, most people don't do this. And then we get and it's not only see something, say something, it's see something, react. So many people see things that they don't feel good about, and they just brush it off as I'm being oversensitive. I don't want to embarrass the other person if I'm wrong. And then they don't change their actions. They don't react to the potential problem. And then they become victims. And we hear it inevitably almost every time there's a victim of a crime. They say, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't react to it. We have to see the potential for things that are wrong by being aware, and then we have to be able to react if and when something is wrong or potentially can go wrong without worrying about what is going to happen to us. So there's more to this, no doubt about it. I mean, I could go on for hours teaching you how to defend yourself physically, and practically, how to tactics inside of a bedroom or an office if something were to happen, and all kinds of other things. We have hours and hours and hours of material, but the bottom line to this stuff is, again, believing that it can happen and then doing something about it beyond what you're hearing from me today. That's what's critical. And then even more importantly, talk to your kids, teach your kids. We're teaching them life skills that they will then, if we can build this foundation in our children, that is creating a foundation of security, they will build on that for the rest of their lives. And then we won't have to worry about what we teach them as they graduate high school to go off into college or to a job in the world. They will already know it, and they'll have that foundation. And when everybody has this foundation of what it takes to truly secure ourselves, everywhere we go, we will automatically become more secure. I appreciate your time. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, take this and do something with it rather than just hearing it, thinking about it for a couple days, and then moving on. Thank you very much for your time.